I should have known the end was coming. And there were some telltale signs. Yo, this is Tribe with Yo Tribe Sports Bag. As you can see, I'm back in the kitchen again today, but I won't be cooking it up like I always do because this is a different kind of show. But before I get to this show, you know your part. Your part is to subscribe to the channel and also hit the alarm bell and give a thumbs up so that we can help this algorithm help me. In addition to that, I want 1,000 subscribers, at least my first 1,000 subscribers. And the only way to do that is with your help. So help spread the wealth. If this is the kind of content you love or like, do me a favor, share it with other people who like this kind of content as well. I can get to 1,000 that much quicker. I want a large sports community as I'm doing this sports thing I've been doing for a little bit of time right now. So I know why you're here. You know why you're here. You saw the thumbnail, and the thumbnail is all about my buddy Bert Sugar. No, I'm not name dropping. He was really my buddy Bert Sugar. It's been 10 years since our buddy, if you're a boxing person or even a sports person, has left this earth. You know, Bert was a real cool dude. I mean, it's easy to say that when he's gone. You know, I would tell him that when he was alive, and also a few other things, because Bert was quite the character. But this show here is about just telling stories of Bert on this 10th year of his passing. And, you know, just giving you my experience with Bert. And I'm sure all of the people out there who have come into contact with Bert during the time he was here probably had similar experiences. You know, I can't even tell you. I don't even remember how I met Bert. You know, I've been in the boxing game. I did some amateur boxing and whatnot, but I can't remember when I met Bert Sugar. I know he had once, I believe, owned Boxing Illustrated, so I used to read his magazines, and along with all the other boxing magazines back in the day, I did the same thing. So that's nothing new. And while knowing Bert, I realized, you know what, he's a boxing icon in terms of the history of boxing. He's written books. But he's written books about so many other sports, horse racing being one as well. Baseball was another big one of his. And he was simply the most knowledgeable person that I've known. And I know a lot of people who have a lot of knowledge, extremely intelligent. You know, Bert is extremely knowledgeable. He was an encyclopedia of all of the things that you have an interest in, whether it is boxing, whether it is football, baseball, politics. You know, we've spoken about politics on a number of occasions, and he was down to earth. And that's pretty surprising when you think about the generational gap between he and I. And, but Bert was the quintessential get in where you fit in character. You know, I remember how people used to say he was Runyon-esque because of the way he was a character. You know, he was a writer, and he had the cigar. He had the whole fit of Runyon. So that's why you can see where that came about. You know, among the stories I want to talk about with Bert, you know, I'm going to kind of try to condense it into the little time here so that I can hold your attention and you don't get bored and move on. One time Bert came to Jacksonville. You know, I used to do sports radio here. There's a sporting event, a charity event, that happens every year in Jacksonville. It's called Guns and Hoses. It's when policemen and firemen fight one another in 3 one-minute rounds, you know, for charity. Police benevolence, firemen's benevolence, things like that. And I've had Bert on the radio show on occasion, so I'm sure people understood that he and I had a relationship that was more than just being on the radio. So they asked me one day, can you bring him down? Can you ask if he wants to come down to be a celebrity judge? And I said, you know what, I'll give it a shot. I mean, no big deal. So I let Bert know, and he tells me, okay, but I know Bert, you know what I mean? He says, okay. and I know he's waiting for a dollar amount. This is a charity event. And ultimately he says, yes, I'll do it. But you let them know that I'm doing it for you. I'm doing it for you. I'm down at your invite. I said, bet. So they have to go through all of these things to get him to come down. He wasn't asking for a first class flight or an extravagant hotel or whatever, but they got him some nice accommodations. So ultimately, I drive up to get him from the airport. And of course, you know what? People, not like Bert, but people who are kind of celebrities or celebrities, period, they act like they don't want attention, but they want attention. Well, I pick up Bert. He comes out of the airport with his glasses on. I mean, he's an older guy. He has glasses. No one ever sees him in public with his glasses when he's on a camera, but he has these glasses on. And I'm like, yo, grandfather, come over here. And he's like, get the hell out of here. You know, if you know Bert, you know his very colorful way of communicating. We're walking in the concourse and no one's paying attention to Bert. And I think it's getting to him. He's passing people and then he's looking back at some people, I guess because they did not recognize him. And then he takes off his glasses and then he walks, you know, we continue to walk. And then someone says, hey, aren't you Bert Sugar? You know, besides that, we also promoted him on the radio show as coming to Jacksonville for the Guns and Hoses. And so, of course, the little circus, not a huge one, but a little circus started. People, hey, you know, get an autograph, take a picture. And that's Bert. And it's funny because, you know, Bert acts like, you know, he's just a regular guy, and he is, but he loves the attention like other people as well. And the funny part is we waited at baggage and his baggage never came. So we went and asked about his clothes, and they was like, well, you know what? Let us know which hotel you're in. And when the clothes come, we'll send the clothes over there. And I was like, okay, that's good. The clothes never came. The clothes came the morning Bert was leaving to go back to New York from Jacksonville. So he wore the same damn thing. But the irony is, he has so many of the same outfits. He's like a freaking cartoon character. You know, Shaggy and Scooby have been wearing the same thing for like 50 years. That's just what he has, a closet full of Bert clothes. And that's what he had. So, you know what? It didn't matter to him. He just wanted to have fun. But along the way, I already had set up an outing for Bert. And the outing was, there was a restaurant in Ponte Vedra, Florida. If you're familiar with Jacksonville or familiar even with the Players Championship golf tournament, Ponte Vedra is where they play the golf tournament. It's a pretty affluent area, as you may understand by now. And they had a restaurant that the new owners had just bought the restaurant. It was called Glory Days, and now is the Bogey Grill. I believe it's still out there as well. And they obviously needed the publicity. So I called them up before Bert even showed up, and I asked them about a comp. You know what, Bert Sugar's going to be in Jacksonville. So I wonder if you could comp Bert, you know, whatever he wants, anything but water, because, you know, Bert, he's not that kind of fish. Water means nothing to him other than to bathe, I figure. And if you know Bert, you know that. So I'm not taking any shots while he's not here. So anyways, we end up going down there. In order to go there, we picked him up at his hotel. Well, I had a limousine. A friend of mine had a limousine company. So we had a limousine to pick Bert up. And in addition to that, we had a contest on the radio station of who wants to have dinner with Bert and I. And of course, people called up, they wanted to. We gave an extremely easy boxing question for someone to win. Jacksonville isn't a boxing town, so people don't know as much. Luckily, there are transplants that have been in boxing or know about boxing. And incidentally, someone from New York ended up winning it. So he and his wife had the opportunity to come with Bert, myself, and I invited some others. My wife at the time, she came. And of course, my daughter was still young at the time. And I had two photographers, you know, and I tell you what, you know, throughout the time I've been in media, I had some of the best photographers. Bert Linebarger, he's pretty much a lifelong friend at this point. He was a photographer of mine. His partner, Dale Ely, he was also a photographer of mine. Those guys are fantastic at what they do. That's why I brought them along on a lot of occasions, and they've assisted me in so many different ways, especially, Bert, I've had cameramen, Leroy Tyler. If you know me, you know Leroy Tyler. I mean, one of the best cameramen out there. And, these people, regardless of what I've done, going to the NFL draft, going to Super Bowl events or whatever, they have been there. But anyway, back to Bert, we get in the limo and there's all these people in this limo and the ride is about 35 minutes from where we are, maybe 40, but 35 to be safe. We're driving and he and I start speaking about boxing. He's talking about Sugar Ray Robinson. I'm talking about Muhammad Ali. And he doesn't like what I'm saying about Muhammad Ali because I guess Muhammad Ali fought at a time where there wasn't exclusively black and white televisions. That's Bert's trait of mind. If it's not black and white, I guess he's not as good. If it's half black and white, he's half as good. That was his mentality. Anyway, we start arguing the entire 35-minute trip. It gets to a point to where he starts calling names. He's name calling, not serious names, something typical of Bert. You little shit, you don't know, you weren't around, that kind of thing. And it was just so phony and contentious as how we just, went about it. Obviously it was legitimate because I'm passionate about Ali. He's passionate about boxing. So it wasn't staged. It's just that, bro, just because you're an encyclopedia doesn't mean I'm going to back down. I know my stuff too. By the way, Bert was the one who proclaimed me as a boxing historian. Take it for what it's worth. But Bert had done that once upon a time. Anyway, we end up getting to Glory Days, which is now Bogey Grill. There's a whole mess of people out there. I had a friend of mine who was in news media. She came out with the camera and made it much more important than it really was. And then the two photographers that I had already, they were taking pictures as we walked in. It created a buzz. There were some people there and it was bigger than it should have been. Well, I'll go back to the time when Bert did not accept money or didn't mention how much he wanted, but he complained about how much he wasn't getting from the time we started talking about the event. So I understood where he was coming from. And I kept reminding him, Bert, this is a charity event. They're doing this for charity. We'll just comp you anything you want, but this is a charity event. I doubt they're going to give you more than a couple of $1,000s or whatever. And then he says, I was in St. Louis and they gave me $5,000. And I was like, yo, bro, this is just not St. Louis. Jacksonville's not even a boxing town. They really support this event, that's for sure. But this is in a boxing town. So what does Bert do? He ordered about 60 pounds of his books. He had them FedExed. So by the time we got to the hotel, he already had all of these books that we had to put in the trunk. And then we get to the hotel. When we finally got there, we settled down. He sells them for like $23.99 or whatever. He autographs them and sells them. He sells out. The dude made a few $1,000s on those books that night. That's Bert. In addition, he drank and he drank because Bert likes to drink. And I like to watch Bert drink. I don't drink alcohol, but I just like watching Bert drink because he's just as cool as they come. Anyway, we had a great night that night. The fans took pictures with him. He gave the autographs in the books and the regular autographs. And it was something to behold. I loved it. And that takes us to the next day. We went to the Guns N' Roses event. The celebrity judges were Bert Sugar, Roy Jones, and myself, and a couple of local news people here in Jacksonville, but that's what it was. And he was received well for the event, and it was an excellent event. They have it every year, and it's excellent every year. The support you get in Jacksonville, Florida for that kind of thing is through the roof. Anything military or police related is through the roof with support here in Jacksonville. So we go to the after party and Bert just lets loose. Everybody is everywhere. They're loving him. They remember him from television or ESPN and whatnot. And he's just enjoying it. He's dancing like an old guy dances. He even threw out the freaking bat Tusi. And I was done. That's when I lost it. I was like, yo, bro, let's just go. It's over. You know what I mean? And I'm kind of like the wallflower there. That's craziness. I'm like 30 years younger and whatnot. I'm the wallflower, and this guy is doing the bat Tusi up in here, and I'm like tripping. But anyway, that was Bert. He was the life of the party. And, that's something I wouldn't forget about him. Regardless of the circumstances, regardless of his age, he was the life of the party. And it brings me to some of the other things that I had done with Bert. Betting. Bert loved to gamble a little bit. And hey, so do I. We bet college football, basketball, and whatnot. One season, I was doing the typical, let's bet with Bert. So I'm betting with Bert, and he's asking me for my picks. And I'm giving him my picks. And my picks win a lot. Not all the time. I'm not God, but they win enough for the select games that I pick. And he won a couple of weeks. And so he keeps coming back to me. And then when I mention teams, he would say, oh, yeah, I picked them too. After a couple of weeks, I realized, yo, bro, he's just full of crap. So I gave him a whole bunch of bad teams the next week just to see. And guess what? Bert didn't win. Then he gets on the phone. Oh, we had a bad week. No, you had a bad week. I gave you BS. I still ran with my own. He just laughed it up because it was funny. And, another Bert incident. And, Bert's always there. He's always been a loyal friend, unbelievably loyal, down to earth, loyal. I can't say it enough. And, one time we went to the Boxing Hall of Fame, and it was the time when Julio Cesar Chavez, Sylvester Stallone, Mike Tyson, Costa Shoot, and I can't remember. I think George Cortez got in as well. And, it was a great time. We met a lot of people and whatnot. And I was glad because Marvin Hagler was there at the time. Sergio Martinez was the big name, and he was there. So, Ken Norton was there. There was a lot of big time names there, no doubt about it, as you would expect. And he calls me into his hotel room. I have my guys with me. And I mean by my guys, I was the head boxing coach at the University of North Florida once upon a time from 2005 to 2010. And so a couple of those guys also made the trip to Canastota. But anyway, he asked me to come into his hotel room. And he's speaking to me, and he's undressing because he's getting into another Bert outfit, the same outfit. It's just fresher. And, he's talking to me just about casual things. And as I'm looking at his leg, he has like blood clots on his shin. And I was like, what happened? Somebody jumped you? He says, no, I was playing rugby. Rugby? He has a rugby or a football field next door to his house in New York. And the young 25 and 26 or 28-year-olds play rugby. And he played with them and got roughed up. He was in his 70s when he did that. That's Bert, though. He sparred with Muhammad Ali once upon a time. So that's Bert. And ironically, he told me he started the rugby club at the University of Michigan. As you may or may not know, he's a Michigan alumnus. So that's obviously there may be some truth to it. I'm thinking, I never had any reason to believe otherwise, but nevertheless, that's Bert, just always into something. At his age, it did not even matter. While at the Boxing Hall of Fame, once we left out of the hotel, we went to go eat. And, we were at the table at Graziano's. If you know anything about the Boxing Hall of Fame in Canastota, you know about Graziano's. Tony Graziano's the owner. And all boxing people are there that day. I mean, everybody who's somebody, or at least most of them are there. Marvin Hagler wasn't there and Sergio wasn't there. But there were a lot of people who were there, and including Aaron Pryor, Vinny Pazienza, and one of my favorites, at least for that day especially, Michael Carbajal. Michael Carbajal was so smashed that day, absolutely smashed. And he comes over to Bert, myself, my friend Kerry, and some other people. We're sitting at, and another one of my UNF guys, Matt. We're sitting at a table, and Michael Carbajal comes over to Bert, says, I don't like you. You write lies. I don't like you. You just tell people lies about me. And Bert was like, go away, Michael. I'm eating. No, I don't like you. You just write too many lies. You told people lies about me. And then Bert, of course, in Bert fashion, looks at him, deadpan, and says, yeah, I told everybody you were sober. And come on, man. As subtle as it was just as funny in the moment. And Michael Carbajal just looks at him, smiles, pats him on the back and says, you're a good guy, and walks away. And it was just And absolutely, it was just funny as hell, man. It's funny. I don't know if you had to be there to make it as funny as it really was, but that story itself was absolutely funny. But you know what? I should have known the end was coming. And there were some telltale signs. And one of the telltale signs was when we had lunch that day, Bert Sugar offered to pay for lunch. Now that's the equivalent of a cold day in hell. So I knew something was going on. The stars were misaligned or whatever. But he decided to pay for lunch for everybody at the table. Man, the last time Bert reached for his pocket was to tell you that he had pockets. That was it. But this time he paid for everyone's lunch. But once again, in true Bert Sugar fashion, Bert goes back to Tony. Tony, can you take the taxes off? Seriously, Bert? Seriously? And that's Bert Sugar for you. You know, there are other stories too. I don't want to make this too long, but this is Bert. And this is 10 years that I haven't seen him or any of us have seen him. So I think I could go a little longer than anticipated with this. And this brings me to the NFL draft. And once again, it's Bert being Bert. It's Bert loving sports, Bert loving life. It's about the NFL draft. It's about baseball, basketball, horse racing, everything. You know, whatever it is you wanted to speak to Bert Sugar about, he was down with it. And he knew something about it. You know, we were at the NFL draft. It was the year Marcus Trufant came out. And after he was taken, we went to the media room because I was covering the NFL draft as well. And his family is there, you know, everybody's eating and whatnot. But then they see Bert Sugar. Everybody gets up and wants a picture with Bert Sugar. The funny part was, this is when Stephen A. Smith was not necessarily just getting started, but when he was a name, but not the name he is today. And they just completely ignored him. And they just came to Bert and everybody wanted to take pictures with Bert. And it was like that with a lot of other people as well. Hey, it's Bert Sugar, man. You know, I love boxing, this and that. And Stephen A. was just sitting there. It's not an indictment on Stephen A. being a good or bad guy. It just shows you where he was then to where he is right now and what Bert was at that time. Bert was a pretty iconic figure. I guess in the grand scheme of things, I don't make it like that because I've known him so well. So I'm not going to make it seem matter of fact, but you know, sometimes I guess it was. I took it for granted that I knew Bert and he was always a phone call away, literally. Because he didn't even have a cell phone. So it was either a home phone or him waiting by the phone in Vegas, which he would do at a press conference. He would wait in the press room by the phone when I would ask for him to come on the radio with me. Hey, you need to call this time because this is Pacific time. And you know, the show we did was from 4 to 7. So I'll be standing by the phone. Make sure you call. And that's how we used to have him on. But anyways, Bert Sugar at the NFL draft, you know, he was at several drafts. He got pretty much the same reception at each draft. And he was just Bert doing Bert kind of things. You know, one of the things I remember as well with Bert is he took to my kids. And my daughter in particular, because she was the one around the longest before my son came around. And so he saw her a lot more than he saw my son. And you know, he would always say, bring the kids to the house so I could buy them a Coke. Guess what? Until this day, they've never gotten a Coke from Bert. We've gone to his house. I've toured his house. I saw his museum, pretty much what it is, a museum that's worth hundreds of thousands of dollars with his memorabilia. And the kids are still dying of thirst. They're not even kids anymore, at least my daughter. She's an adult. But Bert, always being Bert, you know, Bert Sugar, if you knew him for any period of time, that means you've heard the same joke about 1,000 times. And he didn't care. He just said the joke. Whether it was with you or somebody else, Bert just made jokes. And they were the same jokes. So, you know, over all those years, I guess, you know, he just recycled them. He just did. You know, he was very conscious of his environment. Just recycle your jokes. You're doing it with the cans. Do it with your jokes. And that's what he did as well. The last draft I went to with Bert was, I believe, 2011, because it was just month before the Boxing Hall of Fame, which was in June. And after that draft, I drove up to his house. You know, he talked about the coke again. It never happened. And but you know what? And he just, you know, he wasn't as bubbly as he always was. And he, not even for an older guy, he was just bubbly, period. And it's incredible how much energy he had. I mean, I'm feeling it right now at this age, you know, that I don't have the bubbly that I used to have 5-10 years ago. This guy had it into his 70s, well into his 70s. You know, that was the last time I saw him until the Boxing Hall of Fame. And then that fall, I would get up, call him. We'll have our college football picks ready to go and whatnot. And while we were doing it, he wasn't sounding as enthusiastic as he sounded in the past. And while we were speaking, he says, they found a spot on my lung. And I don't even know why it did not process. In my mind, as feeble as it may be, I'm thinking about, bro, just let him wipe it off. But then after about a good 30 seconds, I wonder, like, wait a minute, what, a spot in your lungs? What do you mean? He said, yeah, the doctor said I had a spot on my lung. And I asked, cancer? And he says, nah, I don't know. And I was like, wow. I'm hoping that things get better. And I don't think I took it as serious. I thought that, you know what, this is Bert Sugar. He'll get better. Not even taking into consideration that he's an older guy. Ultimately, time passed by. And I think it was before Thanksgiving, I spoke to him again. And he wasn't sounding like himself. In January, I spoke to him of that year. And the Miguel Cotto Floyd Mayweather fight was announced. I believe it was announced then. And he worked for HBO. So I thought, you know what? He's going to be there. And I asked him, Bert, are you going to the Miguel Cotto Floyd Mayweather fight? He says, I don't know. That was my first real sign that things weren't going in the right direction. You know what? I tried to kind of not ignore it and didn't want to badger him with how's your health issue all the time. So I kind of like, uh-oh. Well, in February, I asked him the same thing. He was like, I don't know. I don't know. We'll see how things are. Well, March comes, March 2012. And my kids have spring break from school. So my wife and I and the kids, we flew to New York and we stayed at the hotel and whatnot. And we were going to see Bert. In fact, the day before I left, I called Bert and he was like, hey, come up here. We'll have a Coke. We already know how that would end. So I spoke to Bert. When I spoke to Bert, I asked him about the Floyd Mayweather Cotto fight. And he says, I don't think I'm going. And I was like, wow. I tried to ignore it. I tried to put it out of my mind. And it just never happened. Well, that Sunday, which is the 25th of March, 2012, I was in the hotel room. My wife had gone up to the Bronx because we had a hotel in Queens. I'm from New York. So she went up there with her family members and she took the kids with her. And I was on my laptop watching Julio Cesar Chavez and Pernell Whitaker. In the background on the big TV, I had ESPN. I don't watch ESPN as much as I guess I need to, but it's on and I'm watching the fight. Ultimately, I get a phone call. I see my phone, but the name of my phone is someone that I know in media that I speak to like once every 2-3 years, 10 if he let it happen. But I pick it up. I was like, hey, he says, I'm sorry to hear about Bert. And I was like, huh? But at the same time, I'm wondering, okay, he's not calling me to tell me Bert won the lottery. And right when he's saying it and telling me, I'm looking at the television and Bert's name is crawling on the ESPN news feed. Legendary boxing historian and author Bert Randolph Sugar passed away of cardiac arrest. And it was a gut punch. And I didn't know what to say. I'm not going to act like I didn't know what to do. I mean, it was huge news. So all I did was I called him and he had an answering service, an answering machine, with the tape recorder in it. And I left a message for him. He used to always have these crazy greetings. Hey, this is Bert. I'm not here, CC, this stuff like that. Bert was just a character. And when I left my message. I said, Bert, I just heard you died. What the hell are we going to do now? And I hung up. And then a little while later, my wife came back with the kids, and I told her, and she was floored because we spoke about that thing in the past. You know, one day we're going to be watching ESPN and it's going to say Bert Sugar passed away on the crawl. And we didn't necessarily joke about it. We just made that acknowledgement because he's an older guy. We know it's going to happen one day. We just hoped it wasn't that day or anytime soon. But it happened. And damn, I miss that dude. Yep, I miss Bert Sugar. I mean, a lot of us do. And you know, social media is here now and it's in full effect. And people pose sometimes and some people don't. Some people just use it for what it was intended for. And I think to myself, you don't have to be or have to have a good life 100% of the time. You know, social media allows you that benefit of making it seem as if you have a good life 100% of the time. No one does. Sometimes you have people who show as if they have bad times or a bad life 100% of the time when you don't as well. You know, when you have bad times, you do have a slither of hope in a good time somewhere in the mix and you can live. So what you do, you have a great time. And the way to do that is to take that good and you take that bad and you put them together. That makes it great. Why does it make it great? Because during the good times, you know you've had bad times. And during the bad times, you know you've had good times if you've overcome whatever it is that you were overcoming. And it makes it great. Bert lived a great life. I didn't know him all his life, but he lived a great life. And I endeavor to do the same. And I know a lot of you out there probably do as well. You know, do the best you can with what you have, etc. And try to be better people because of it. You know, I miss Bert. I mean, his wife misses him. Suzanne, she misses him. His son misses him. I saw the sentiments from around the world when he passed. So it's not just here in the US. So thanks for the memories, Bert. And if no one else had done it, I'm doing it. I'm going to acknowledge you on the 10th year of you no longer being with us. And for all of you, you know this is a sports channel. Check out some of these other videos here. Take your grab. It's a grab bag of sports. Enjoy watching it. And until next time.